Have you ever finished a conversation and immediately started replaying it in your head, not just once, not just a quick recap, but over and over again, analyzing every single word you said, rethinking every response you gave, replaying the moment you said that one thing and cringing so hard you physically have to shake it off, lying in bed at 2 in the morning, editing a conversation that already happened 6 hours ago and cannot be changed? You think about what you should have said instead. You imagine a better version of yourself handling it more smoothly, more confidently, more perfectly. You go over their tone of voice, trying to figure out if they were annoyed at you. You wonder if you said too much or not enough, whether you came across wrong, whether they went home thinking less of you. And the worst part is, you know it is over. You know the conversation already happened. You know replaying it changes absolutely nothing. But you cannot stop. If that sounds familiar, then this video was made for you. Because what you are experiencing is not a quirk. It is not you being oversensitive or dramatic or weak. It is one of the most deeply rooted psychological patterns that exists in the human brain. And once you understand exactly why it happens, and what it is actually trying to do, you will finally be able to start dealing with it instead of just suffering through it. Let's start at the very beginning. Your brain has one fundamental priority above everything else. Not happiness, not success, not even survival in the physical sense. Its number one job is to protect your place in the social world, because for hundreds of thousands of years, being rejected by your group meant death. If the people around you turned against you, if you lost their trust or their respect, you were finished. Alone in the wild with no shelter, no food, no protection. So your brain evolved to be obsessively alert to any moment where your social standing might have been damaged, any conversation where you might have said the wrong thing, any interaction where someone might have walked away, thinking less of you. And the way it processes those moments is by replaying them, analyzing them, searching for what went wrong, and how to prevent it from happening again. This is called post-event processing, and psychologists have studied it extensively, particularly in connection with social anxiety. Your brain is not torturing you for no reason. It genuinely believes it is running a quality check. It is going back over the interaction to extract lessons, identify threats, and prepare you to handle similar situations better in the future. The problem is, it does this job extremely badly for most people. Instead of reviewing the conversation calmly and extracting something useful, the brain zooms in on every flaw, every awkward pause, every slightly off-word choice, and inflates them into evidence that you failed socially in some significant way. It completely ignores everything that went fine. It edits out the moments where you were articulate, warm, funny, or genuine, and it presents you with a highlight reel of your worst moments on loop until you are convinced that everyone in that conversation walked away thinking you are a complete disaster. That is not an accurate analysis. That is anxiety wearing the costume of self-reflection. And here is what makes it worse. The people who replay conversations the most are almost always the people who care the most about others. The ones who think deeply, the ones who are genuinely concerned about how their words land, how people feel around them, whether they hurt someone accidentally. Replaying conversations is in many ways the brain's version of caring. It just expresses that caring in the most exhausting and unproductive way imaginable. There is a specific psychological term for the thinking pattern underneath all of this. It is called rumination. And it is different from reflection in one critical way. Reflection moves forward. You look back at something, you extract a lesson, and you apply it going forward. Rumination circles. It goes back to the same moment again and again without ever reaching a new conclusion. It generates heat, but no light. It feels like thinking, but it produces nothing except more anxiety and more self-doubt. Psychologist Susan Nolan-Hoeksema spent decades researching rumination and found that it is one of the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety disorders. Not because ruminating people are weak, but because the brain gets stuck in a loop. It was never designed to stay in this long. The review process that was supposed to last a few minutes gets extended into hours, days, sometimes weeks. And the longer it runs, the more distorted the conclusions become. What starts as, "I wonder if I said that wrong," becomes, "They probably hate me now," becomes, "I always say the wrong thing," becomes, "I am fundamentally bad at connecting with people." That entire spiral from one ordinary conversation to a global conclusion about your worth as a human being happens automatically below conscious awareness, while you are just trying to fall asleep. Now, there is another dimension to this that almost nobody talks about. The people who replay conversations most intensely are often people with a very high need for cognitive closure. This is a psychological concept that describes how strongly a person needs to resolve uncertainty. Some people are comfortable sitting in ambiguity. They can have an unclear interaction and shrug it off because they don't need to know exactly how it landed. But people with a high need for closure cannot do that. Uncertainty feels genuinely threatening to their nervous system. So they replay the conversation, trying to reach a definitive answer. Did they like me or not? Did I come across okay or not? Was that a good interaction or not? Because their brain cannot rest until it has resolved the open loop. The cruel irony is that replaying the conversation never actually closes the loop. You cannot get certainty about how someone else felt by analyzing it alone in your head. The only way to get that certainty is to ask them, which most ruminators will never do, or to accept that you simply cannot know, which is the exact thing their brain is trying to avoid. So the loop stays open, and the replaying continues. There is also a deep connection between conversation replaying and perfectionism that very few people recognize in themselves. Perfectionists do not just apply their standards to work or achievement, they apply them to social performance as well. Every conversation becomes something that can be done well or done badly. Every interaction has a standard it should have met. And when the perfectionist brain reviews that interaction and finds moments that fell short of the standard, it cannot let go. It holds on to those moments and keeps returning to them because somewhere underneath the rumination is a belief that if it analyzes them long enough, it will figure out how to be perfect next time. But perfect social performance does not exist. Human conversation is messy and imperfect and real by definition. And chasing perfection in something that is inherently imperfect is a loop that never ends. Here is something that will genuinely shift how you see this pattern. Research on memory shows that the conversations you replay in your head are not accurate recordings of what actually happened. Every time you replay a memory, you are not playing back a video file. You are reconstructing it. And every reconstruction is influenced by your current emotional state. If you are anxious, your brain reconstructs the memory with more threat in it than was actually there. The pause that felt neutral in the moment gets reconstructed as disapproval. The slightly distracted look on their face gets reconstructed as boredom or annoyance. The thing you said that felt fine at the time gets reconstructed as awkward or offensive. You are not replaying the conversation. You are replaying your anxiety's version of the conversation, and then treating that distorted reconstruction as objective truth. Psychologists call this memory reconsolidation bias, and it is one of the reasons that the more you replay something, the worse it tends to feel. Each replay slightly amplifies the negative details and slightly softens the neutral ones until the version of the conversation in your head barely resembles what actually took place. So what do you actually do about this? The first step is recognition. The moment you notice you are replaying, name it. Literally say to yourself, out loud if you need to, I am ruminating right now. Not to shame yourself, but because naming the process interrupts the automaticity of it. It creates a small gap between you and the loop, and in that gap you have a choice that you don't have when you're unconsciously spinning. The second thing is to ask yourself one honest question. Is there a concrete action this review is leading to? Is there something you are going to do differently, something you are going to say to someone, something genuinely useful that is coming out of this replay? If the answer is yes, do that thing and stop replaying. If the answer is no, and most of the time the answer is no, then recognize that what you are doing is not problem solving. It is anxiety performing as problem solving, and no amount of further replaying will produce a different result. The third thing, and this is the hardest one, is to practice tolerating the uncertainty, accepting that you will never know exactly how that conversation landed, that you cannot control what the other person took away from it, that even if you said something slightly off, most people are so absorbed in their own experience that they registered it far less intensely than you did. The psychological term for this is the spotlight effect, the consistent human tendency to massively overestimate how much other people are focused on our mistakes and flaws. The truth is, they are too busy replaying their own conversations to spend much time analyzing yours. You are not the main character in other people's mental reruns. You barely have a supporting role. And that might be the most freeing thing you hear today. The part of you that replays conversations is not broken. It is a part of you that cares deeply, thinks carefully, and wants to show up well for the people in your life. Those are genuinely good qualities. They just need to be redirected away from the loop and towards something that actually moves you forward. Because the conversation is over. It happened. It was real and imperfect and human, exactly the way all real conversations are. And you are allowed to let it go. If this described exactly what happens in your head, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone in this. Drop a comment about a conversation you've been replaying lately. You'd be surprised how many people are lying awake with the exact same thing on their mind. See you in the next one.